So how long does it take to drive from Omaha to where he lived?
So probably close to an hour. I would say
Okay.
anywhere between like 45 minutes and an hour. The central office of the Department of Corrections is actually pretty close to where he lives.
Oh,
That's also in Lincoln. And so he kind of lived on like the outskirts of Lincoln. He officially still was like in like a Lincoln zip code, but when all of this had happened, I think even we were a little confused, like which authority would be taking over the investigation, if it was the Lancaster Sheriff's Office or if it was the Lincoln Police Department. And technically, due to where him and Marshall and their sons lived, it ended up actually being the Lancaster Sheriff's Office that took over due to like the proximity of where he lives. So they lived on an acreage just kind of right outside of Lincoln. Like I said, it kind of was one of those weird lines
mm,
where I think it probably could have been close to either LPD or LSO, but LSO took over due to exactly the location of their home. But yeah, they have an acreage, like I said, just kind of on the outskirts of town. It's more like Southwest Lincoln is where they lived.
okay.
Um, yep, and have horses and dogs and animals and things like that. And then yeah, their two boys obviously live there too. So that's kind of like location wise. The street's called Burnham. That's the location. And most of the people on Burnham Street have like smaller acreages.
Okay, so I'll get to this question in a minute. I was going to ask more about that. I think it's interesting. And when I lived there, I lived in a house in Papillion, and it was really kind of rural. Even though
Yeah.
Papillion is a city, it was a rural
Mhm.
area, and then it got incorporated by Bellevue. So without even moving my address, that's why I say I was from Papillion, Bellevue. Well, it
Yeah.
changed, so I understand how that works. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I could get library cards at this place, and sometimes, so yeah, as cities grow, the
Hmm.
jurisdiction
Yeah.
when like snowplows would be from one city and police would be from another,
Yeah.
so I
Yeah,
understand
so he
that.
was still part of like the county, like so. Even I am out in Bennett because I actually moved back to our hometown a couple years ago. So I actually live in Bennett. I am actually out in the country on an acreage, part of my family farm. But yeah, he was Lancaster County, so he was not within city limits. So that's why the Lancaster Sheriff's Office took over the investigation.
Okay, that makes sense. um, so I want to make it clear that we are in no way pointing fingers anywhere, but a lot of people have messages on message boards, and I've been researching the internet, and I just was curious what questions people had. And of course, a lot of the questions will circle around the last person that saw him allegedly and was married to him, meaning Marshall. But I also want to make
Mhm.
it clear that we're not at all pointing fingers at Marshall. The police have completely said that he is not a suspect at this time,
Yep.
so we don't want to imply that we think that he is. But it does help to understand Tyler if we understand Marshall. And so I do have some questions about Marshall. Um, when did Tyler and Marshall first meet? Not necessarily what day, but what do you remember about them getting together?
Yeah, so it's been a while. I believe they've been married around 8 years. So a pretty significant time and had dated before that. I believe they met in Lincoln. I don't know specifically how they met, but yeah, they met in Lincoln. Marshall is also from like a small town. I think he is kind of from like the David City area. So he grew up in a small town as well. I believe he moved in high school to Lincoln. And then yeah, him and Tyler had met in their 20s, and got married, and I think have been married either 7 or 8 years, so pretty significant time. They moved a couple of times. I don't know exactly when they moved to their newer home. Marshall's mom does also live on the same road that they live on, just a couple houses down. I know Marshall's family is pretty involved in like the horse business, and so they have like miniature horses and things like that. And so that was a big passion I know of Marshall's and Tyler's. And so that's something that they definitely like had in common. Love dogs, so they have a couple dogs, I think two or three. And so that's, something again that I know that they definitely like had bonded over. And then a few years ago, they had decided that they wanted to foster. And so I do remember specifically talking to them about becoming foster parents and how that was going to go over as a gay married couple. And it's not always something you hear about. And so obviously I was super supportive of it. Tyler and I, even growing up, would babysit a lot of the same families. And so I knew he was great with kids and had nieces and nephews that he was super close with. And so I was excited that they wanted to get into being foster parents. And they had, actually thought it through, how's this going to go over being, a gay couple? And, is the kid that they end up, fostering, like, how do they feel about that? And so I do remember them fostering. And even before they had decided to adopt Alex, talking to him about how he felt like, do you want to become officially part of our family? And really wanted it to be his decision. And so I thought that was just incredibly thoughtful that they did that. And then just recently, within the last year, sorry, I have a 10-week-old puppy. And so
Oh,
she is
that's okay.
like,
Don't hear him
I
at
look
all.
distracted. Yeah, she's like occupied. She's pretty cute, but she's like,
Oh my goodness.
I
Look at
know.
her.
I know. And she can like see outside, so she's like wants to go outside and like run around. But
That's
um
so cute.
I know, sure. So last year, they had an opportunity to they also fostered Alex's half brother. And so that was something that they again had talked about, Andrew. And
And these are
so
older boys,
just
so it's not like it's toddlers, right? They can make
correct.
a
Yep.
decision.
Yep. So, and that again was something that they had talked about. They knew, especially in the foster care system, like a lot of people are aware, it is really hard to adopt older kids. I mean, they're just the kids that typically don't get adopted. And so that was something that they had talked about that they intentionally wanted to do, was to give, these kids a loving home. And so they adopted Alex and then had the opportunity to adopt his half brother, Andrew. And so Andrew officially became part of their family last year. And so, yeah, adopted both boys. Both are active in, sports and activities. And, you would see Tyler and Marshall out and about doing different things with the kids and stuff like that. So it's just hard to imagine that what they're going through, the kids are going through. I don't know. I haven't talked to them. I don't know the kids as well. But I can't imagine what they're going through. And so this is incredibly like hard to even, fathom that they lost their dad and all the media attention that has happened. And these are kids that also went through some pretty horrific things in the foster care system and were bounced around a lot by different families. And so to finally have, some stability and that feeling of, having loved ones on both sides. I know Tyler's family and Marshall's family both accepted those boys. And so, you finally have grandparents and cousins and things like that. So it's just it's really hard. It really is.
Has Tyler's family been able to still have relationship with the boys since Tyler went missing?
I believe so. I don't know in what capacity, to be honest. I know that they're boys, and one's like 16 or 17, and the other one I believe is a sixth grader. So I think they have cell phones and have their numbers and things like that. I don't know, given the fact that this happened, right before Thanksgiving and right before Christmas, exactly, if they got to spend the holidays together or not. But as you can imagine, it's probably extremely difficult for both sides on how do you go through the holidays having this like hanging over your head and not knowing what happened. And so I don't know exactly to what capacity they still talk. Alex is a wrestler, so I know he wrestles and things like that, and is still active and works and has a job and all that kind of stuff and has friends. So, I think kids are resilient and they're probably trying to do the best that they can to have some sort of normalcy and like still get through school and get through what's going on. But I can't imagine that this isn't a huge distraction,
Oh,
not
yeah.
knowing or what they're being told, right? I pray that they are not getting on the social media channels to read all the theories and stuff that's going on, but it's hard to imagine that they're not. Again, kids have access to all that stuff, so I don't know exactly what they believe happened to their dad.
Because the oldest son was not home,
Correct.
correct? He was at work or at a friend's house or,
Yeah, that's my understanding is he worked at a local, fast food place like many teenagers do, and then went to like a friend's house for like a sleepover or something, and then the youngest was home. And so it was confirmed that they were going to do like a family movie night. And so Tyler actually had gone to Costco in Lincoln, which is in South Lincoln, and bought a pizza, around 5:30. They confirmed that on camera. You could see him buying the pizza. I think through some text messages with friends had said that they were going to have like a family movie night. Obviously just the younger one was home, but that was the plan, was a family movie night. So yeah, the youngest one was home during, whatever transpired that evening.
that has to be rough. I feel really a lot of compassion for all those involved, but mostly for those boys. I mean, yeah, that's got to be incredibly rough. From your perspective, what type of a relationship did Tyler and Marshall have together as a couple?
Yeah. So again, from my probably limited interaction with all of them, together, um, it seemed loving. And I think social media sometimes can portray that, here's this gay couple who again seems to have really loved each other. And the few times, that we had hung out and everything, like everything seemed fine. Marshall was at my 35th birthday party with Tyler, and things seemed happy, and they had just adopted Andrew. And so here they are in this really beautiful home on an acreage. Both seem to have success in their jobs. Tyler was really happy at Department of Corrections, loved his job, was super active. That's something I always like to remind people. Like Tyler had a lot of friends, ran marathons, played sand volleyball. So I mean, again, from an outsider even looking in, everything seemed fine. You never really heard anything. Obviously, now that Tyler has gone missing, you learn more that maybe things weren't as picture perfect as social media likes to portray it. That divorce was definitely a discussion that they had been having. And that even just days, hours, weeks, whatever leading up to Tyler going missing, divorce was something that was a main topic for them. I don't know who initiated the divorce. I know that they had attempted to go to marriage counseling. I don't know if they were actively still going, but I know that was something that they had tried to do. But it does sound like divorce was something that was most likely going to happen. That maybe they had even had discussions around, you know, who was going to have the kids primarily, and who was going to be the one moving out and things like that. But it's tough because just in discussions with other family and friends, I really do think Tyler wanted to make the marriage work. I think he was trying really hard and had made comments that he did not want to be divorced, that he wanted the marriage to work and he would do what he can to keep his family together. Um, but it doesn't appear that that was probably going to happen. And so it it's hard to know exactly what their argument was the night that he went missing. We do know it was about divorce. I don't know what else, to be honest. It was video or audio recorded. So Marshall had did audio record the conversation argument. Um, so I know divorce was definitely something that had probably caused the escalation of the argument to the point where Marshall felt like he did need to call 911. So it's tough because, again, outsider looking in, things seem fine, but obviously behind closed doors, they weren't. So,
And that is one question that comes up a lot. And as far as if there allegedly there was no physical altercation that night, but Marshall felt like it could turn to that, so he called 911. But a lot of people are suspicious of that, of course. Why would you call 911 when nothing physical had happened? But people do. People do. They both seem to be very athletic,
mhm.
and you know, were they into hunting and fishing, or just sports and running, or
Yeah,
horses?
they didn't hunt or fish that I'm aware of. I know for sure they weren't like really into hunting. I guess I don't know about fishing per se, but
Yeah,
definitely more like horses and I don't know if Marshall had played sports or not. But Tyler definitely was an avid runner. Big into marathons. He's also a vet, and so he served in the military. Took a lot of pride in, staying in shape and played sand volleyball. He played sports in high school, so he definitely was physically fit. I think on our missing persons poster, I think we said like 6'1" or 6'2", 185 pounds. I talked to one of his running buddies, and I don't think it was out of the ordinary for him to go run 7 to 10 miles, but somebody said he could easily run 30 if he needed to. So I think
wow.
Tyler, yeah, had that capability that he could run pretty long distances, And so when we originally heard that Tyler went missing, I think that's a rumor that was out there, was that he went on a run and went missing. Well, like I'll admit me and the other friends were one of the ones that said that because we just didn't know. We just knew Tyler went missing. We didn't know that there was any sort of argument between him and Marshall. We didn't really at that point know about the 911 call. We didn't know about the recording. We didn't know about a lot of the events that had led up to Tyler leaving the house. All we knew was that he went out the garage door, had his tennis shoes on or whatever, and had athletic shorts and one of the shirts he wore all the time when he went running. So we also knew he was training for a marathon. There was a big marathon in Lincoln that weekend. I think it was the Good Life Halvesy, which is a very popular race. And it's, I think, a team of 4 or 5 people, maybe even more, and everybody runs like a leg of it. And he had signed up and was supposed to be running that on Sunday. So, you
I
talk
have
to
many friends
runners.
who have done that race.
Yeah. And you
Yeah,
talk to other runners, which I am not one, so I don't know, but they're
nor
like,
me.
you probably wouldn't run on a Friday night if your race is on Sunday. And I'm like, oh, okay. But again, if that's your form of therapy and you just got in an argument with your significant other and you needed to like go blow off steam, and that I don't know, like it wasn't too far-fetched for me to think that maybe he just needed to get out of the house and go for a run. I mean, that seems plausible, to go do that and burn off steam. But once we learned the details of what had led up to it, it didn't, things started not adding up, right? That he left through the garage, that, he had taken his phone, his wallet. Then we've learned out later he did take his keys, but didn't take his car. And then there was camera footage of someone, running through the backyard. And I think that's still up to debate of whether or not it's Tyler or not, but that wouldn't
Let's
have
talk
been
about that for a minute.
sure.
So, I've watched it over and over, tried to enhance it, and it's a good chance it is, or it's a good chance it isn't. But how often would someone be running along that area? I mean,
they they wouldn't, and that's what I'm saying is it wasn't. I think that's when we started learning, like, yeah, it doesn't make sense that he was intentionally going for a run. Maybe unintentionally he was frustrated and left the house. Sure, I mean, it's his backyard, but it was like out in an acreage. It's not super level ground.
it's
It
not
was in
a
the
running trail.
It's not a running trail. There's barns and stuff in the back there that, we're like, okay, maybe he was running to the barn, but the angle that this person was running, they would have been missing the barn when the barn was kind of like straight back. This person was kind of going at an angle out of the garage. It did appear that this person had a cell phone on while they were running. We do know timeline wise, Tyler's phone went off pretty quick, like within a minute, seconds after this run had happened. So there was just a lot of questions around that. But yeah, definitely not like an intentional running path was like behind their house. If he wanted to go on an actual run, he would have been running probably towards the road, which he would then have went out the front of the house. So I think pretty quick we were like, yeah, this wasn't an intentional run like we had originally thought. And so we're trying to squash that rumor right away. But it was also nice to get that information out to the running communities because those people are very supportive of each other. And Tyler was really well known in the running community. So we have received a lot of support from those groups. And when we started doing searches for Tyler, they were the ones that knew the trails best in Lincoln. I mean, they were the ones that would tell us, like, and his running partners, they would say, yeah, he would run Antelope Park, or he'd run the Jamaican Trail, or he'd run by Wilderness Park, which are all really popular running paths. But it didn't appear that Tyler really went off trail a lot. It was pretty popular trails he would stay on. And so, yeah, a lot of that just didn't add up and make sense that this was an intentional run.
Well, and if you were out on an intentional run, it was dark. The last thing you would think you would do is turn your phone off because you might want to use it, especially if you're off trail, as a way to light your path, unless you were turning your phone off because you didn't want someone to know where you were. I mean,
Yeah,
I
and he
don't
had a
know if they had find friends. And maybe
yeah,
if
he
you're in a
had
fight with
a
your significant other, you might say, you know what, I don't want them to know where I'm going right now and turn it off.
Yeah, sure. It's all
Yeah.
plausible. And he had a watch, like a Samsung watch. The watch was tied to his phone because that was a question I had. It was I believe Tyler would track his runs. I don't know if he would track them when he was just like practicing, but he would definitely track them when he was running his marathons. So we are like, is there any way we could ping the watch and try to find, because the watch hasn't turned up. So we were like, is there any way we could ping the watch or anything like that? And it doesn't appear that that's the case because the phone was also tied, or the watch was tied to the phone. So when the phone went off, the watch wasn't tracking, I think is what I was told. And so
Mm.
trust me, we've tried multiple ways to figure out,
Yeah.
you know, Snapchat locations,
So
live
that was something that I saw in
360.
an interview that the last ping was from a Snapchat quite a
Mhm.
ways away. So I personally don't have Snapchat. Does that
Yeah.
mean someone from that location tagged him or that he was in that location?
Yeah, it's a great question. We tried to kind of figure that out. I think it had to do with it's called like Snapchat Maps. And so it might have been, if I understand correctly, maybe the last time he had opened the app, you can kind of see, but I don't know, I'll be honest, how long that
Yeah.
map location shows until you open it again. So one of his friends had seen that he had opened it, but we don't exactly know at what time he had opened it. It could have been the day earlier or prior or not, or yeah, maybe earlier that day. And just like when everybody realized Tyler went missing, one of the friends got back into Snapchat to see and had noticed that was maybe the last time the app was open. So it didn't really provide a lot of clarity for us. We did use that kind of snap map as our original location to start looking for him. And so when we started organizing searches, that's kind of the area we had focused on. But again, the more and more we found out, we're not exactly sure that's really even plausible. And maybe, yeah, at one point he was there, but it wasn't anything that was really going to help us find him. And then same thing with the phone ping. According to authorities, the last cell phone ping, which he had, so he has Verizon, but Marshall has, I think, T-Mobile. So they didn't even have the same like service, like cell phone service, like they weren't on the same plans or anything. But we were able, like I think LSO was able to get, record of whatever they needed from Verizon. And it sounds like the last cell phone ping was pinging at the house, which, makes sense. It pings probably to the closest cell phone tower, and it was showing the location of the home. So it matches up with the time that potentially, if that was Tyler that was on the video, he like ran out of the house and then his phone went off.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, so many questions. It feels like it is something that can be solved, however, so that's why I like to get the details, and then as people watch, they can maybe somebody saw something and they
Yeah.
don't even realize. And I know that in the Lincoln area, people want to help. I know there's a lot of communities where people are like, ah, that's not my problem. I don't want to help. But I don't feel like that's how it is in Lincoln. People want to help, but sometimes they don't know what they know,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think pretty quickly, I mean, after we learned Tyler was missing, it was, Saturday. Family was, notified, and Marshall had called 911 and filed a missing persons report the following morning. Family and friends started finding out. And I remember personally getting a call from one of Tyler's best friends, Amanda, who I'm also best friends with, just sobbing and telling me Tyler was gone. And I was like, well, what do you mean he's gone? And she's like, Rachel, like he's missing and we can't find him. And I want to say that was like maybe 11 o'clock on Saturday night. And I remember being out with friends and she just was hysterical. And her and Tyler talked every day. And so she knew something was wrong because they talked every day. And his phone was off. And she knew that's not something Tyler did. And so that's also, I guess, a big question I have, Amy, is why would he turn his phone off? It wasn't something
Why?
he did. Like he
Yeah.
didn't turn his phone off. I mean, like we were all like, when's the last time you turned your phone off? I was like, I think when I needed like to update it, right? Like Verizon sent out an update and I had to shut it off and turn it back on. Like it wasn't a common thing. And Tyler was really active on social media. And so really well connected, networked well with people, had a lot of friends, active on, Snapchat. And I think he had Instagram and Facebook. And so texted friends all the time, was texting with a coworker pretty close to right even before his disappearance about like something he was going to go do for them on Saturday. They'd asked him to come do like a speaking engagement. He called a friend at like 7:40ish right before the disappearance. And so we know he was using the phone right before it went off. So I really struggle to think that he purposely turned it off. Like, why would you call somebody and then shut your phone off right away? Because what if they were trying to call you back? Which I think they probably were. And even if authorities wanted to talk to you, if the story is true and you didn't get into a physical altercation with your spouse, you're not going to get in trouble. So
Right.
I have a lot of
Right.
questions because the theory was he shut his phone off because he didn't want the authorities to, I don't know, find him because he didn't want to get in trouble because he worked for the Department of Corrections. And if they would have like learned that he, I don't know, maybe had an altercation with his husband and charges were, presented, he'd lose his job. But if he didn't actually have an altercation with his husband and and Tyler's in my thing is he's in the system, like Tyler works for Department of Corrections, like he knows how things work. So I
Mhm.
mean he is smart enough to know that if he did physically hurt somebody, he could get fired. Like I mean he knows that. But if he
Right.
didn't actually hurt anybody, and just got in an argument and left, like we're being told, why would he shut his phone off? And he would need somebody to come pick him up. And so he apparently grabbed his keys before he left, but he didn't take his car, which is weird to me. And then called somebody at 7:40, 7:41, but then shut his phone off. So that's all. Like I am the same. I have so many questions of like, if you get a fight with your significant other, I know my first call would be to my best friend. And
Right.
or I'd call even a family member and be like, I need somebody to come pick me up. Like I just need to get away from here. And I think he did. I think he was calling somebody, and maybe that was the case, but to shut your phone off right after you call somebody seems not like a natural thing that
Right. I
I
have
would.
family members who got into an altercation, a dispute,
Yeah.
and they had find friends on each other. So the person that left did not turn the phone off. They turned off their find friends, and they
Yep.
actually blocked that person from calling them because they're like, I just need a break. That just seems like a normal response if you were wanting to get away from your significant other than to just turn it off and then have nothing. But my next question is the fact that no ring cameras or anything has caught him on a run that night, other than that little blink video right out the backyard,
Mhm.
seems very suspicious to me because not everyone's ring cameras record everything that happens, but there's enough that do. It's hard to get very far
Yeah.
before you would be seen
Hmm.
when you're on foot.
Yes. So exactly. I wish like I could have had like a body camera on myself and all of the people that were out Sunday knocking on doors, and I was the crazy girl going house to house to house with my other best friends and Tyler's family, begging people to look at their cameras, asking them to go through their footage the night before if they see anything to turn it into LSO. You
So at
know,
this point, was Marshall or any of his family doing the same?
so his sisters, which I don't know them, like I don't even know their names to be honest. They were at the search on, I believe, Monday. So we started really searching, getting things organized like Sunday afternoon ish time frame. Like by then, we had already set up the Facebook page. I had posters made. We kind of had used Good Life Fitness as like our home base. Um, I'd gotten in contact with the authorities, had them and Game and Parks to help us kind of coordinate where we were going because Wilderness Park was kind of and Pioneers Park were our two kind of main focuses. But yes, his sisters were part of the searches. Marshall was not. He had told Tyler's family that he was not going to go on the searches, but he was going to stay home with the boys to try to, keep things normal for them, and had made that clear that he was going to stay home. So he was not on any of the searches. But his sisters were, and I don't know about any other family for sure, but most of Tyler, if not all of Tyler's family and friends, have been. Out there looking, but that was kind of the area that we had focused on just because that was kind of the closest to the house. And we were trying to do our best to make sure that we were canvassing those areas. But like Wilderness Park is like 1,400 acres or 1,500 acres. I mean, it's insane.
I
So
think that a
we,
lot of people visualize Nebraska as these plains and open land, and they
yeah.
really do not understand. I mean, I have many friends around the country. When they would come to Omaha, they'd be like, this is not at all what I thought Nebraska looked like.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point is the area like directly behind Tyler's house, there is some there's some really thick trees and stuff. And so, but then it kind of backs into a field. But there are of parks in Nebraska, surprisingly. Like people don't know that, but we have a ton of green space, tons of parks. Lincoln's actually really well known for that. And so Pioneers Park and Wilderness Park are huge areas.
Yeah,
And so to try to cover 1,500 acres of wilderness park is insane. And
yeah.
so I had worked with the Lancaster Sheriff's Office and Parks and Rec because I was friends with the director, and they actually created an app for us to use that broke the park up into like quadrants. And
Oh,
so what we did is when we decided to create these search parties, we made like team leads of each group, and that person had access to the app. And as they walked, we could log into like the app and check that box off. And so we were able to visually see these are the areas we had covered. And then it was nice because then we could give that information to the authorities. So then they didn't have to spend their time trying to search these huge wooded areas because they know that we already had. And
I'm
so,
impressed. I am impressed. I follow a lot of cases, and I don't know any case that within 2 days, I mean, because it was Friday, he went missing. By Sunday, you're already starting searches. I am amazed. You did a wonderful job on that. And
thank
that
you.
helps to answer a lot of questions. A lot of times people assume different things, but the fact that
Yeah.
you already were searching within 2 days, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Did they
I think
find
we,
anything?
oh, I mean, found a lot of stuff, but nothing that was like tied to the case, unfortunately. They still haven't. And there was like some question on exactly like, what Tyler had on him and things like that. I have talked to Marshall on occasion through just like texting and messaging, and he let me know just recently that the wedding ring was actually still at the house, like in a desk drawer. So I know like that was originally reported that he had his wedding ring on, but now Marshall's like, no, it's here at the house. And so there was a missing wedding ring in Lincoln recently that came up, and people were like, oh, is this Tyler's? And I'm like, no, like it was actually at home. So there's all these things that like you kind of learn post the first few days, right? It's crazy. And I am lucky in the sense that like I've had a lot of training in like crisis communication. Clearly I've never had a friend go missing or family member, thank God, but I've been through crisis communication. I feel like I handle things probably a little bit differently just because I've had some training in like how to manage large groups and how to quickly organize people. And I'm pretty well connected in the media world because of my past roles. I was a journalism student, have done a lot of on-camera things just through my job. And so pretty quickly I was able to get the word out because I think we've all seen enough missing persons reports that the first 48 to 72 hours are crucial. If he went missing on Friday night, by Monday, who knows what could have happened. So by Sunday, I'm like on the phone with every news outlet that I possibly have numbers for. And I'm saying, look, like my friend's missing, and he is not somebody that just picks up and leaves. Like, this is not a case where Tyler Goodrich intentionally walked off the face of this earth and deserted his kids and his husband and his friends and his family and his coworkers. Like, Tyler deeply loved and cared for all the groups that I just mentioned, loved his dogs, loved his animals. Like, he's not one of those people to do this. This isn't, a Chicago or, some huge city like LA where people go missing a lot. This is Lincoln, Nebraska. And this
Yeah.
isn't normal. Like, and there wasn't, from we know, this giant physical altercation, right? Like, we don't know if anybody actually got injured or if that's the case. Like, according to authorities, they don't think so. Like, they checked it out. Like, they didn't see anything. There's been no crime committed, just Tyler left. And so we're like, okay, well then what actually happened to our friend? Like, did he run because he was frustrated and he got hit by a car? Did he fall and hit his head? I mean, did he get lost? I don't know. I mean, we've all like searched everything we can
So
and
let me
nothing is,
ask you this. That's one of
yeah,
the things that on some of the message boards that people have said that there was a truck that hit something, possibly a deer. And
yeah,
then people are saying, did they find out if it was a deer? Is it possible that somebody hit him on a run?
yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
So I don't think it was that truck that I'm positive and confident that authorities have looked into that and ruled out that that was a deer. I think unfortunately maybe that person might have been not forthcoming in that information because they didn't probably want to get in trouble. Maybe they were, I don't know, maybe they were drinking or something, but they don't believe that it was anything tied to Tyler's case. Do I think it's possible that it was an accident, whether somebody hit him? I do. I wish I had evidence to know that that's the case. I don't know if this was intentional and something happened that caused Tyler's disappearance. I think that's the hard part about this, Amy, is like I literally think about this case like all the time. Like it is completely consumed
Yeah.
almost all of our lives, on top of managing the Facebook page, which now has, I don't know, 24, 25,000 people. You probably can't imagine the number of messages I've received from everybody from friends and family to sidekicks to random people across the country that just want to help and asking if they can put up posters or if they want to do a podcast. I mean, I've been trying to manage that along with, the other admins as much as I can. There's not one theory that stands out over another that makes for some sort of like plausible explanation of what happened. I think there's theories that make less sense than others, like Tyler committed suicide. Like to me, that's not even a rational thing to think about because I knew
Well,
him.
and
And
especially, this is the question that I have for you. Have you ever heard of him being suicidal?
no,
No.
no. And everybody I've talked to, whether it's authorities, professionals, like, I don't know, I'm not some expert in mental health and I don't trust me, I don't claim to be, but it is really hard, my understanding, to like kill yourself and then hide the body. Like, so that's my thing is if it was intentional and he actually did intentionally hurt himself because maybe he just had hit a breaking point, we haven't found a body. And like we've been searching. And of course, like we've had some really bad weather in Nebraska the last month. And so searches have completely gone silent. I think there's some plans to ramp that back up now that the snow's melted and that maybe hopefully once we can get some better data back from like the cell phone companies and stuff, maybe we can narrow our searches down to at least where we think he could be. But it just, I've never heard that. And people are like, well, he was in the military and he was gay and this and this and this. I was like, yeah, but that didn't matter to Tyler. Tyler was so just like easy going. And you talk to anybody close with him, like Tyler was the kind of guy that could just like roll with the punches. Like it didn't matter what was going on. I even think with the divorce, like of course it was bothering him, but even then the few people that knew that it might have been happening were like, Tyler's like, we'll figure it out. Like that's just how he was. And so for him to get in one fight and then leave the house to go kill himself just doesn't even like that's not like if I had to rank that, that would be like the least plausible thing. Like I just don't at all think that that's the case. I don't have one that ranks higher than another. Do I think he went on a run and fell and hit his head? No, I don't. Again, we would have found him. Do I think maybe somebody picked him up? I think that could be a possibility. Again, it's hard because I'm like, okay, he's 185 pounds, 6'1" guy. Like if I'm just driving down the road and I see him walking and I don't know who he is, am I gonna pull over and be like, hey, do you need a ride? Like, I'm not. Did somebody else? Maybe. I don't know. He's not an easy target. You know what I mean? That's what I think people like, maybe somebody kidnapped him. I'm like, maybe, but also Tyler was not like he's not somebody that you would easily be able to do that. Like he's
Okay,
not.
Rachel, just
Sure.
for devil's advocate, let's
Sure.
go down that
Okay.
rabbit hole for a minute, just so that it can be out there.
Yep.
My I've got a real good friend in Omaha that told me there's another person that went missing 2 weeks later, another male, and he
Mhm.
was a semi driver with a
In Iowa.
semi
Mhm.
load of pigs, and that was in Iowa. And for people that don't know the geography, Iowa and Omaha are just across the river. I mean, it's
Yep.
very close. So,
Mhm.
what do you think the chances are that there's some serial killer or some abductor taking
Yeah.
men?
Amy, I think anything is possible. I have tried to look at this case with not having any sort of like preconceived notions of what did and didn't happen. I pride myself in good judgment and being very rational. And I think that is incredibly like unlikely, but I'm also like, I don't know. I mean, there's been crazier things that happen. And I've also been following the Iowa case very closely, to find out what they're learning. And it's gone cold just like ours has. And so there's just not a lot of evidence in this case at all. Like, right, we haven't found the cell phone, we haven't found wallets, there's been no activity on credit cards, there's been no, activity on social media, besides the very grainy blink camera video of somebody leaving the house. That's really all we had. We did have a dog tracker come out, that I think you and I had talked about previously, and they believe that the dogs had picked up the scent. We know that there's definitely an error potentially, because this was like 20 days past Tyler going missing. Of course, if this was like day 2 or 3, which is like, if I would have known that, maybe I could have set that up sooner. We all could have tried to get a hold of somebody sooner. Authorities had dogs out there. I don't know if they were scent dogs or if they were human remain dogs. I know those are two different things, but the ones that did the tracking were scent dogs. So they had Tyler's scent. Marshall had gotten items of Tyler's. One of Tyler's sisters was there with Marshall when the dogs were there working. It was two different dogs, professional dog tracker.
So
And
Rachel, I have this question for you.
sure.
Um, who ordered those scent dog trackers separate from the police? And was there time to stage it, in your opinion?
So it was me. I had got them. It was like a friend of mine that knew about somebody, and they have asked to remain anonymous, just so that's
Yeah,
out there.
absolutely.
They don't
Yeah.
want to get tied up in anything, but they had their dogs do this. And so they had reached out to me, a friend of a friend. And so I actually called this person and said, here's what's going on. So pretty quickly after that conversation, after I worked with the family, because I've been trying to be good about not getting involved in some of that stuff. And so I've kind of feel like I'm kind of like the in between, like I'm the
You're the
random
middle
friend that,
person.
yeah, I'm like the random friend that like knows how to do all this stuff, but I'm also like, I need that. Like that has to be like a family situation, and it is touchy, right? I mean, you're
Right.
asking for items of clothing and maybe a hairbrush or anything that these dogs can get the sense. And so, I wasn't there physically when they did the tracking, but I had talked to both people that were on there, Marshall and Tyler's sister, that said it was amazing to see the dogs work. They both fully believe that the dog had picked up his scent. Authorities of course question it because it was so long afterwards. But I was originally the one that I had kind of gotten in contact with the person, and I just let kind of the family handle it from there, and they were able to get it set up. But they needed the articles of clothing. Then the dogs needed, I think, a day with the scent to pick it up. So they had to you almost have to train the dogs to only pick up that scent and nothing else. So there is kind of a timeline of when that is. Could it have been staged? Maybe. I don't know how easy. I don't know how easy it is to do that stuff.
I have personally gone and
Yeah,
watched the scent dogs work. It was like a
yeah,
competition, and it was to see which dogs were better, whatever. And I've even put on the whole suit and where the dog follows your scent and comes and attacks you, whatever. I've personally done that. It's
yeah,
crazy,
yeah.
but it's amazing what dogs can do, first of all. But I
Mhm.
talked to an investigator about it who did dog handling, and I said, what are your thoughts on this? Could a dog get a scent 20 days later? Could, I ask all these questions, and it's interesting to find out that, I mean, it's hard to say, but dogs don't go after, they don't start going, if they're trained scent dogs, they don't start going and take you on a run, so to speak, unless they're following something. So the dogs were following, someone did that, or those dogs wouldn't have run. And I'll show the pattern.
Yeah.
So there, somebody did that at some point. So either it was Tyler or it was staged. That was the opinion of the investigator that I talked to.
Now, you would assume if a person was going out for a jog, they're frustrated, they've been in an altercation, that they're going to go somewhat in a straight line. Not through the forest, certainly along some sort of path, whether it's a walking path, along a street, or something like that. But that is not what Tyler did according to the trail that the dogs were able to pick up. He left his house and he zigzagged around through the forest, zigzagged on what could have been a straight line, really, ran a straight line, zigzagged some more, and ultimately ended up by the fire and rescue, and the scent went cold on the street. So it certainly appears as if he got in a vehicle. Now let's look at a map at the area where he left from, allegedly, from this street. You can get onto Highway 77 very easily, which also connects to many major highways and interstates, 80, which goes all the way across the country. The distance between Lincoln and Omaha is not even an hour. You can get there in about a half an hour. And the thing of it is, Lincoln, Nebraska City, Omaha, and all the surrounding areas are very lush. There's a lot of rivers and streams. The Missouri River is one of the largest rivers in the entire United States, and there's a lot of foliage. So there's a lot of places that you could hide or be hidden. A lot of people think of Nebraska as the plain state and that there wouldn't be all this foliage and rivers and streams and lakes and whatnot. But in this area there are. It's not like western Nebraska where there is open fields and land as far as the eye can see. No, the Omaha-Lincoln area is very different than the rest of the state. In fact, I took this video from my backyard during a thunderstorm, but I just wanted to show you that even when the leaves are off the trees, there's certain trees that are around the Omaha area that never lose their leaves, and they can cover a great area. In the back, behind my yard, you can see there's just like a black line of trees, and there's an entire lake that goes around there, and you cannot see it at all because the trees are so thick, and the lake is down in. So you never go in this lake. It's just got all kinds of wildlife and animals, but it would be so easy. And this is just one example of all the places in the Omaha area where a search party would have to go. And you really couldn't get a drone in there because there's too many branches and leaves and trees and things. It would be easy to hide a body. So the big question I have is, was this scent accurate 20 days later? And if so, who picked Tyler up off of the street?
And in talking to Tyler's sister, she said it was really amazing to see them work. Obviously she shared that path with, we have a private investigator also working on the case. So he has that. He might even have a more in-depth one than the one I even shared with you. That was maybe a little more clear. But again, dogs kind of, they kind of walk around and then they get back on a path.
Yeah.
But I think what you have is pretty close. But it does appear that if that's the case, and the sheriff's office has it too, it ended on the same road that he lives on. And so I'm kind of like you, if that's the case and the dogs are correct, maybe he was hanging out in the tree line. They've walked that many of times. So anybody that's asked, like, have you looked in that area? Yes. Like, authorities have searched and searched and searched Tyler's home, the property, adjacent properties. They've searched ponds. They've used sonar technology. I think we've even had metal detector people out there that do that for a living just to try to find anything. So they searched that area. It is crazy wooded. Like, it is thick, 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 some of that area that he was in. So could he have been hiding out? Maybe he was waiting for authorities to leave, was heading back to the house. But if it's true, his scent ended on Burnham Road, which is the road the street he lives on. And so again, I'm with you, like trying to think through this. If it's accurate, something happened there. Either he got
Right.
picked up, he got hit,
Something happened there. And then the trail goes cold from there.
Rachel has given me so much information, and I still have one more video to post to continue on with the interview. I am astounded at how much she knows, how much the police know, and yet how much we still don't know. So if you want to watch the third installment, I'll be posting that in a couple of days. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to all so you'll know when I put up new content, and I will see you again soon.